temperature update. I keep bringing people in who are milling about the office because we've gotten to the point where we do this. We actively complain about things. Squeaky wheel gets the grease, I guess. We do that a lot. And I'm like, hey, come in here. See what it's like.
See what we're dealing with.
See the hell I have to go through. And then I explain to them that I feel bad about complaining so much, but once I tell them to walk in there, they're like, no, you're good.
No.
It's bad. It's rough in there. I've been told that the AC guy is here.
Mm-hmm. I've seen it with my own eyes.
So that is great news for us, and probably not so much good news for us, but more so good news for John and Josh and Nick, who will be in here in about an hour. But let's head to the 42 Degrees of Source hotline, where we meet up with our good friend Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Joins us now. Sam, good afternoon. How are you?
Hey man, how are you doing today?
Very good. Let's go back to last Friday. How do you start to kind of unpack the announcement that Nebraska made regarding Memorial Stadium?
Well, I think people kind of saw it coming. We figured that something might happen when Troy Dannon was not able at his opening press conference to just say definitively, yeah, full speed ahead there. Basically what that meant was somebody had said, hey, I don't know that we're going to be doing that. So, you got the sense that was going to happen. And, I understand why they're doing it that way. I think, it's actually, the response has been pretty darn smooth, Connor. I don't think there's
not
been
bad.
Too much stink. Yeah. I don't think there's been too much stink about it. I will say this, that it puts more stakes on this season, for sure.
It definitely does.
If you want to get this whole thing done, you've got to find a way to win some football games, because there's not going to be like a larger appetite in 2 years for a $500 million project. Like, this thing will probably only get more expensive. So,
agreed.
You've got to be able to pitch that on the backs of a 9 or a 10-win season in 24 or 25. That's when that will begin to happen. And so, I think this is a little bit of Midwestern prudence at work here, but it won't be more prudent in 2 years unless Nebraska wins big. So there's an opportunity here for Matt Rule and his staff to win games. And I do think they've got a favorable operation the next 2 years with some experienced linemen. And they don't. This is not a build team. This year is not a build team. You got old linemen. You've got some pretty old players in other spots. The only thing you're young is really your quarterback. But everything else is going to be old. So this is a season where you can't play the young card. Yeah, this is the year where you're going to play the old card. And so they have an opportunity this year, and they got to try to win.
Is there a right time to do it? I mean, if we're still talking about significant changes, if not, the complete demolition of South Stadium, like, is there a right time to do it?
Well, I think the right time to have done it probably was at a different time, earlier than now. But you can't change the past.
Yeah.
And to do it now obviously means you're trying to move quickly. You want to get that thing done, demolished at the end of the season, and then rebuilt by the start of the 2026 season. That was all going to move really quickly. And I think you were going to see a kind of a whole different vibe, Connor, with the way they were going to manage that. Certainly the construction of it. The construction of the football building dragged on way too long. I think everybody agreed with that. I don't think that was going to be the case with the new situation. But the reality is they're going to reseat and re-chair back east and west because it's part of a pricing strategy. I don't know that there'll be a similar pricing strategy for South Stadium. The South Stadium rebuild was about making a better fan experience for the fans that had spent many years in South Stadium and making a better experience for the student section. I don't know that either one of those things are priorities at this point. So I think those things have been backburnered, and Nebraska will get to them when they get to them. And if you're able to say, hey, you're buying the tickets anyway, so why do we need to change anything if you keep buying the tickets? That's an argument. it may have to come to the day when the fans stop buying tickets, and then you realize you got to do something in order to attract them. That's kind of what happened in Nebraska basketball, if we're going to be honest with you. The thing was such a dump. Talking to Vanny prior to its renovation for volleyball, the cobwebs on the doors. It's like you were, in Eastern Europe during the, behind the Iron Curtain. By the time that thing ended over there, and I think everybody just looked around and they're like, all right, well, obviously we either need to completely redo Devaney or we need to go to PBA. But it took fans literally not showing up for years before somebody really paid attention to that. And it'd probably be the same case over at South Stadium. I did a story last year on South Stadium during the Michigan game, and I took a bunch of photos of stuff over there, and there's detritus and debris. There's old hookups of just wires hanging around. There's weird photos as you walk into the bathroom. You're looking at photos of football players running. It's kitschy and it's frankly strange.
It's very strange.
Yeah. Now they can change some of that without tearing the South Stadium down. You can turn that into something less strange with very little effort and virtually no money. But I don't know if they'll do that. I mean, there were people sitting on benches that were just like turned over and rusting because they were hot because they weren't ready to walk up the 9 miles of ramp.
Yeah.
There were people standing on the ramps like at certain platforms because they were winded. And they were just sitting there and looking out on the detritus in the stadium. There was a pervasive smell of wet runza that runs sort of in that South Stadium area. It's just, I don't know what to tell you. And Troy Dannon hasn't experienced it really.
Yeah. Maybe
he went over there and experienced it during the spring game. I doubt it. I think he was probably busy that day. But now I say all these things somewhat lovingly. Other people would be very angry when they say it. I don't mind urban decay. So I sort of find it interesting.
No, there's something. Nebraska has been about the football, right? And so your comfort be damned in it,
right?
And that's, I don't know if that's the way of the future, though.
Yeah, I'm the person that on Twitter follows the brutalism architecture website. Like, and brutalism is stuff that we really we don't use anymore, but the glass boxes from the Bauhaus era, whatever. So I love that stuff. So like, I'm not necessarily the person who feels emotional about those things. I'm just explaining what it is.
Yeah.
And granted, here's the other thing, Colin. A lot of times you're only paying $6 to sit over there. Like, sure. If you go on the secondary market that day, the day of the game, it's about $13. It won't be that for Colorado, but by God, it'll be that for, some other Rutgers. The homecoming against Rutgers, it'll be, or Northern Iowa. It ain't going to be much money. They'll get over there. I remember when I was a kid, the week after they beat Colorado in '92, and everybody remembers that. Well, they played another night game against KU the very next weekend. I remember getting in for $5. Now, inflation would make that about 15 today, but it's always been able to get into South Stadium if you want to sit up, in the middle of the sky. So it's up to them. If they want to make a premium experience, then they'll do that, and they'll spend $200 million doing it. Or they can kind of keep it the way it is, and the odd people like me will go over there and get a kick out of the debris and just the strange things that are over there. The fencing outside with still some remnants of barbed wire. I don't know why. It
really does.
If you go over around,
yeah,
there's barbed wire.
I know. Yeah, it's on the self-guided tour ramp there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, what is going on? Like, it's just like, it's like the area Time for God. And, I'm like, you may want to take down the barbed wire. I don't think anybody's climbing up those walls to get in. I don't even know when they put it in. They put it in like the 60s or the 70s. I don't know what they were afraid of back then. So, it's kind of like walking through the past. And I used to get kind of a kick out of out of Devaney too. And Doc Stadler's last team is over there. You're basically sitting in a barn, with dust. I mean, it was, but they changed it, right? They changed it a lot for volleyball, and now it's the Palace.
Isn't the theory though, to your point about the seats, and you can get in for $10 or whatever, you can walk in. If they go forth with some sort of renovation plan for that portion of the stadium, theoretically you could charge more money for tickets, right? And that's the idea of what they're doing in East and West Stadium. So they're talking about making the seats revenue generators. And I don't know. I feel like a lot of the math didn't quite add up. Just we're talking about the $20 million line item for paying athletes and stuff like that, and their new TV contract hasn't even kicked in yet. I'm just interested in the thought behind pushing this back when eventually you're going to have to do something.
Yeah, I mean, I think talking about the money and the cost is all fair. The bottom line is the rich people don't want to fund it, and they don't want to go to the the government right now because it's a tight time for everybody. And inflation's high, and building costs are high, and the University of Nebraska is concerned about whether it's funding and academic department. There was a prominent, there was a story that came out in the winter about Trev Albert's doing some sort of weird accounting at UNO, and that story prominently mentioned the $450 million. I mean, there's currents all over the place on this thing. The reality is Trev wasn't going to get it done. I don't think the way he wanted to. I do think it probably contributed to his departure, although he told me it didn't. I think it was probably a sense of frustration around it. He was trying to do something that, very few people could have pulled off, and he was not able to pull it off. He left, and now, it's going to turn into, I was telling somebody else this too, like, Trev's unique, and I wrote this too. He's a unique athlete. He's almost like an aristocratic, Olympian kind of guy and I don't even mind this. I appreciated it, actually. He seemed to be about some things that were slightly different than your standard athletic department.
Definitely.
So, but that's not the system we have now. Troy Dannon is a guy that's worked his way from the very bottom, and he's done that by being a really good AD to his coaches and being a service to his coaches. And he is going to be a really good AD to the football coach, and he's going to be a service to the football coach, and that's what you can expect from him. And so, I'm not saying Nebraska's averse to spending money. I just don't think they're going to be spending money on that. I think you're going to see them spend on other things that Matt Rule wants.
Sam, we appreciate it as always. Good to chat. We'll talk to you next week.
Take care.
Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Man, that was vivid.
Now,
I need to go back and listen to his answer and just listen to him describe South Stadium. And I want to play it. I want to play it. And there's debris. I mean, it's so vivid. That's why Sam is such a good writer. He's so descriptive, and it was so perfect. You walk around the concourse, and people were keeled over because they couldn't get up half the stairs. It's like a war. He drew a picture of a war zone in South Stadium. But it smelled like wet runza, but it's $6 a ticket. I kind of like it. I don't know.
You know these guests better than I do. Some of them don't like to be taken out of context, so we don't turn things they say into poll questions. I would really like to ask the audience, do you love urban decay? I don't know how Sam would respond to that.
Just take responsibility for it. It's just that's us.
We want to know.
We want to know.
Do you love urban decay?
Because we're asking, do you love urban decay? I love urban decay.
Also, before
there is something warm and home about it, like it's not nice, but it's ours. Did you see Josh Allen's schedule release video for the Buffalo Bills when he when he went out to the construction zone, he was like, "It's not much, but it's home." That's like us right now.
Mhm.
It's not much, but it's home. And Nebraska has said that Nebraska's telling you that they would just rather spend money on other things. They would just rather spend money on other things at this point. I do wonder, and I don't know the situation of the world in which this exists, but like if the process had not begun on, like, if Trev gets here earlier, right, and the idea and the project of the Go Big project was not already out there and being fundraised for at the point and being built at that point, is that Trev's first priority? Is it Rule's first priority? Was it Rule's first priority? As much as Rule is I think we could live with what we got and we can make do anyway, that type of guy, no excuses type of guy. I wonder how much of a priority that would have been for him. And then you continue that thought forward and you say, well, if they wouldn't have done the $165 million Go Big project, would it be an easier pill to swallow to build and rebuild, tear down and rebuild $450 million South Stadium? And then you would have been in the process already. You would have been in that project. Like it might have been demolished already, going into this year. And then you don't get to make all these excuses about who's throwing the football in the wind tunnel. Like you don't get to say that out loud because it's done. It's already happening, whether you like it or not. I think going forward, that would have been a good plan. But like Sam said, they weren't going to be able to do it. I mean, they just weren't going to be able to push it through. And I think it absolutely had to do with why Trev's not here anymore. And like you said, there's a variety of different currents and all these different things that are going on. But I do think he had the right idea. Maybe it was part of being the right idea is the right situation too, is the context in which it's introduced. Maybe it was too big of a bite of a cookie, it was too big of a bite, or it was the whole cookie, whatever.
Love a whole cookie.
I do too. I eat it all in one bite sometimes. It's great. So maybe just a smaller bite of that cookie from Trev could have been part of the realization process of like, all right, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, but like, let's do this just scaled down a little bit. But no, he was, let's do it. If we're doing it, let's do it.
You don't get my vision.
And that's the part that people don't like about Trev, because retrospectively they look back and they say, oh, it was all self-serving. Trev's, Sam just mentioned it, like Trev approached things differently than most athletic directors approach things, but he was the right guy for that job. But now you could retrospectively look back and you could say, oh, well, this was Trev's vanity project and he only wanted to do this because it was his stamp and this is Trev's legacy and all this stuff. And you could paint that out to be a not so good picture. It's a personally self-serving picture, but I really don't think that's what it was for. But he definitely had very specific ideas and plans, which I think the more specific, the better, personally. But
yes,
it feels like we're going forth without a specific plan, and that feels like it might be detrimental to the future of the stadium entirely.
Very.
But what do I know?
Now, Connor, one other thing happened during that interview.
What else?
I was handed by one of our cohorts here in the building.
Oh, was it a note?
No, it was a cold thermometer taken from our fridge or freezer here in the station.
Thank you, Mike. What does it say?
Well, it was rapidly climbing while Sam was talking, and I'll put it up on Zone TV now. Let the camera come into focus here a little bit.
Come on. My God. Is it broken?
It's as high as it can go at about, 85 or something.
I don't think it's 90 in here, but I think it's close.
Right.
I think we're probably in the 88 range.
Yeah.
Just keep that up, just so we're not liars. We're not just complaining for the sake of complaining. If it was 88 in your house, you would go to a hotel. You would leave. You would leave.
You would
That's
say,
what we're
Mom,
doing right
Dad, can I come over? Something. You would do something.
Yes, you would do something about it.
Now, luckily, the repairman is here, and hopefully we'll all look back on this one day and laugh. But for the time being,
it'll be very funny one day.
This needle on this thermometer might break.
The needle don't lie, baby. The needle don't lie. Well, I guess in this case it actually does because it's not telling the complete truth.
It cannot go any higher.
From the 402.
Hi, 402.
What hasn't been talked about is the flex the donors did to Dannon. Trev had a project to bring the stadium into the 21st century, but the big donors said we need to be taken care of because we wasted a bunch of NIL money on players that haven't panned out. Yeah, like I said, I still view the NIL and the capital projects, the big upgrades, stuff like that. Like, I still view them as two separate. I know they're probably coming from a lot of the same people, but I still view them as two separate piles. I think you could have them both. But yeah, I mean, that's certainly mixed into the conversation as well. The stress on the donors and then their bite back and just say, just not right now. And like Sam said, that's where the political climate comes into account. There's been a long-standing tradition in Nebraska where we don't ask for money, and it's a tough time to ask for money. Programs are getting cut all over the board. Times are tight. And I tend to think the reaction from the state. Now, what do I know?
Very little.
What is our general disposition on Husker football?
Win games.
Well, yes, but like supportive, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Very, very
supportive. Pretty much all the time. And so, I don't know, maybe Nebraskans would be like, yeah, I mean, sure.
This is the one we want you to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're
spending all this money on everything else. Finally, something I could get behind, winning some football games and building a nice new stadium for me to sit in. It'd be great. I don't know, maybe I'm dead wrong on that, though. Joe writes in on Twitter.
Hi, Joe.
I still contend that the primary reason Trev left is that he wants to be the commissioner football conference when implemented. And with a resume, having been an athletic director in the Big Ten and the SEC, he would have to be a top candidate. Sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah,
totally see that.
I didn't know at the time when he took over that he had those kind of aspirations, but I think it became clear that he did and does for sure. But I only think, Joe, to answer your question, or to respond to that, I only think that became more and more evident as it became more clear that he wasn't going to get what he wanted here.
Yeah.
You follow?
Yeah. The donors showed their hand, I'll show my hand.
Yeah. It's like, oh, well, I could just leave. I could go do other things, and then that becomes a more prominent thought in the mind. All right, good stuff from Sam. Like I said, go listen to that incredibly descriptive imagery on Memorial Stadium's south portion. I want to go back and listen to that one after the show because I just want to laugh again. We didn't give enough credit in the moment for how funny it was. It's fantastic stuff. We'll come back with more next on 1620 The Zone.
The Connor Happer Show.
Who's pitching tonight?
Yu Darvish, having a great year.
The Connor Happer Show.
I know about that guy.
On 1620 The Zone.
What a mess.